You make the same choices every day and wonder why nothing changes. You avoid certain conversations, suppress specific feelings, judge particular behaviors in others while ignoring them in yourself. And beneath all of this, there is a pattern you cannot see because you are living inside it. Carl Jung understood that success is not built on the parts of yourself you show to the world. It is built on your willingness to reclaim the parts you have hidden, denied, and projected onto others. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the reservoir of energy, creativity, and power you have been taught to disown. And until you integrate it, you remain fragmented, reactive, and dependent on external conditions to feel whole. Most people think shadow work is a dramatic confrontation with darkness, a therapeutic excavation of trauma, something that happens in isolation or through intense introspection. But Jung saw it differently. He understood that integration happens in the small, daily choices you make when no one is watching. It happens in the moment you feel anger and choose to acknowledge it instead of performing politeness. It happens when you notice envy and examine it instead of dismissing it as unworthy. It happens when you catch yourself judging someone and ask what that judgment reveals about what you have rejected in yourself. The shadow forms early. It is everything you learned was unacceptable, the anger your family could not tolerate, the ambition your community labeled as arrogance, the sensitivity you were taught to hide, the selfishness you were shamed for expressing. These parts did not disappear. They went underground. And from there, they control you in ways you do not recognize. They emerge as compulsions, as projections, as sudden emotional reactions that feel disproportionate to the situation. They sabotage your relationships, your work, your sense of self because they are fighting for recognition. Success in the Jungian sense is not about achievement. It is about wholeness. It is about retrieving the energy you have spent repressing parts of yourself and redirecting that energy toward conscious creation. Every time you avoid your shadow, you leak power. You become smaller. You become more rigid. You become dependent on maintaining a persona that requires constant effort to sustain. And eventually, that effort exhausts you. You burn out not from working too hard, but from the psychological labor of pretending to be someone you are not. The first daily choice is to notice when you are performing. When you feel the urge to say what someone wants to hear instead of what is true. When you smile to avoid conflict. When you agree to something that violates your boundaries because saying no feels dangerous. This is not about becoming brutally honest or socially reckless. It is about catching the moment when you abandon yourself to maintain an image. The persona is necessary for navigating the world, but when it becomes your identity, you lose access to everything beneath it. You lose access to your instincts, your desires, your genuine responses. And without those, success becomes hollow. You achieve things that do not satisfy you because they were never yours to begin with. The second choice is to sit with discomfort instead of immediately solving it. You feel anxious, and your instinct is to distract yourself, to numb it, to analyze it until it becomes manageable. But anxiety is often the shadow trying to communicate. It is the signal that something unconscious is demanding attention. When you rush to eliminate discomfort, you eliminate the message. Jung believed that symptoms are not problems to be fixed, but symbols to be interpreted. The tightness in your chest, the irritability you cannot explain, the exhaustion that has no physical cause, these are your psyche speaking in the only language it has when you refuse to listen consciously. The third choice is to examine your projections. You see someone as arrogant and you feel immediate aversion. You perceive someone as weak and you feel contempt. These reactions are rarely about the other person. They are about what you have disowned in yourself. Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This does not mean everyone is a mirror or that there are no genuinely difficult people. It means that the intensity of your reaction often reveals more about your shadow than about their behavior. When you notice strong emotional charge around someone, ask yourself, what am I seeing in them that I refuse to see in myself? The fourth choice is to speak the thing you are afraid to say. Not recklessly, not without consideration, but when the fear is rooted in protecting an image rather than protecting genuine connection. You hold back your truth because you are afraid of judgment, of conflict, of being rejected. But every time you silence yourself to maintain approval, you reinforce the belief that your authentic self is unacceptable. The shadow grows stronger in silence. It feeds on the energy you use to suppress it. And eventually it finds other ways to express itself: passive aggression, resentment, withdrawal, or sudden eruptions that damage the very relationships you were trying to protect. The fifth choice is to claim your ambition without apologizing for it. Many people, especially those conditioned to prioritize others, have relegated their desires to the shadow. They have learned that wanting too much, demanding too much, taking up too much space is dangerous. So they minimize their goals, they downplay their achievements, they wait for permission to pursue what they actually want. This is not humility. It is self-abandonment. And it creates a life of quiet resentment where you are perpetually accommodating others while your own potential remains unexpressed. Jung understood that individuation requires the integration of both the selfless and the selfish, both the giving and the taking. You cannot become whole by only developing one side. The sixth choice is to acknowledge your anger without immediately justifying it or suppressing it. Anger is one of the most commonly shadow-cast emotions, particularly in cultures that value niceness over honesty. You learn early that anger is destructive, that it makes you difficult, that it should be controlled at all costs. So you swallow it. You rationalize it away. You turn it inward where it becomes depression or outward where it becomes judgment. But anger is information. It tells you when a boundary has been violated, when you are tolerating what should not be tolerated, when something in your life is misaligned with your values. When you refuse to feel it consciously, you lose access to its guidance. The seventh choice is to stop using busyness to avoid yourself. You fill every moment with productivity, with tasks, with obligations, with noise. You tell yourself this is discipline, this is responsibility, this is what success requires. But often, it is avoidance. It is a way to prevent the shadow from surfacing. Jung warned that the unconscious will always find a way to express itself. If you do not create space for it through conscious reflection, it will create space for itself through symptoms: exhaustion, illness, compulsive behaviors, or crisis. The daily choice to pause, to sit in stillness, to allow what is beneath the surface to emerge, is not a luxury. It is a psychological necessity. The eighth choice is to own your envy. Envy is a socially unacceptable emotion, so it almost always lives in the shadow. You feel it and immediately cover it with rationalization. You tell yourself you do not really want what they have, that you are happy for them, that envy is petty and beneath you. But envy is a map. It shows you what you desire but have not given yourself permission to pursue. When you see someone living a life that triggers envy, they are showing you a disowned part of yourself. Instead of judging them or dismissing the feeling, ask what that envy reveals about your own unexpressed potential. The ninth choice is to notice when you are trying to control outcomes to avoid feeling powerless. Control is a defense mechanism against the shadow emotion of helplessness. You micromanage, you overplan, you refuse to delegate, you exhaust yourself trying to ensure nothing goes wrong. This is not strength. It is the ego's desperate attempt to avoid encountering its own limitations. Jung taught that real power comes from accepting what you cannot control and focusing your energy on what you can. This requires integrating the shadow aspect of vulnerability, of uncertainty, of trusting that you will survive even when things do not go according to plan. The 10th choice is to honor your need for solitude without labeling it as isolation. Many people have cast their introversion, their need for quiet, their desire for solitude into the shadow because they were taught that these needs are antisocial or selfish. So they force themselves into constant social engagement, into networking, into availability, and they wonder why they feel drained and resentful. But solitude is where integration happens. It is where you process experience, where you reconnect with your inner authority, where you distinguish between what you genuinely want and what you have been conditioned to want. Without it, you remain perpetually reactive, perpetually shaped by external demands rather than internal clarity. These choices are not dramatic. They do not announce themselves. They do not produce immediate, measurable results. But they are the foundation of psychological wholeness. And wholeness is the precondition for sustainable success. When you are integrated, when you have reclaimed the energy trapped in the shadow, you stop sabotaging yourself. You stop seeking validation from people who cannot give you what you need. You stop choosing paths that look successful but feel empty. You start moving from a place of internal alignment rather than external approval. Jung believed that the confrontation with the shadow is the beginning of individuation. It is the process of becoming who you actually are instead of who you were taught to be. And it is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice of noticing, acknowledging, and integrating. Every time you make a choice that honors a previously disowned part of yourself, you become more whole. Every time you stop performing and start being, you reclaim power. Every time you examine a projection instead of indulging it, you expand your consciousness. The world will resist this work. It benefits from your fragmentation. It benefits from you seeking external validation, from you staying small, from you projecting your power onto authorities and experts and systems that promise to complete you if you just follow the right steps. But no external system can integrate your shadow. No achievement can fill the void created by self-abandonment. No amount of success will feel satisfying if it is built on the repression of your authentic self. Other people will feel threatened by your integration. They will sense that you are no longer playing by the same rules. They will interpret your boundaries as rejection. They will see your authenticity as aggression. This is because your wholeness confronts their fragmentation. Your willingness to own your shadow makes their denial more difficult to maintain. This is not your responsibility to manage. You cannot individuate for others. You can only do your own work and trust that your presence will either inspire them or repel them, depending on where they are in their own process. Success without integration is fragile. It depends on circumstances remaining favorable. It collapses when challenges arise because it has no internal foundation. But success built on wholeness is resilient. It can withstand failure, criticism, setback, because it is not dependent on external validation. It is rooted in the knowledge that you are more than your achievements, more than your persona, more than the image you present to the world. The shadow holds everything you need to become complete. Your rage holds your power. Your vulnerability holds your capacity for intimacy. Your selfishness holds your ability to set boundaries. Your darkness holds your depth. When you stop running from these aspects, when you stop exiling them to protect an acceptable image, you gain access to the full spectrum of your humanity. And from that place of fullness, you create differently. You lead differently. You succeed differently. These 10 choices are not a program. They are not steps to follow in order. They are invitations to notice where you are living in denial, where you are performing instead of being, where you are projecting instead of owning. And each time you make a different choice, each time you choose integration over repression, you change the trajectory of your life. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually, steadily, irreversibly. Jung said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is the work. This is the path. Not to eliminate the shadow, but to integrate it. Not to become perfect, but to become whole. Not to transcend your humanity, but to fully inhabit it. And it begins with the small, daily choices you make when no one is watching, when there is no reward, when the only motivation is the quiet commitment to live as yourself instead of as the person you were taught to be.